It had been over a week and Gary still awaiting a doctor's release to return to work from his ruptured colon and surgical colectomy. Deciding to visit an acquaintance in Wichita, Dr. Jean Picard, Ph.D., a sociology professor at Wichita State University, whom he had met on ICQ before his medical mishap. Gary, discovering Jean was a railroad groupie. She loved trains, their presence, their cultivation in American history. Asking if it would be too much for him to drive her to Omaha, so she could travel the scenic route west through the Rocky Mountains to Grand Junction, Colorado on the California Zephyr. Once arriving, she would rent a car, visit the Colorado National Monument, spend the night, and retrace her travel back, but this time continuing on to Chicago to visit relatives. Gary, wondering about the gravity of her thinking, a turnaround trip to Colorado seemed a little much, but after giving it some thought, and with nothing better to do, agreed to drive her to Omaha. The two meeting at Jean's residence near the university campus, their morning spent touring the little-known Wichita Great Plains Transportation Museum. The building was not the main attraction, but the locomotives exhibited on the sidings next to the building were. Gary not as enthused about trains as Jean, somewhat anxious to get the Buick headed north on Interstate 135 toward Salina, never having driven to Omaha before. Traveling north, the couple finally saying farewell to the 4-lane I-135, at the junction of Interstate 70, the highway designation returning to US 81. A 2-lane blacktop known as the Harvest Trail, the historic highway from Fort Worth to Canada, anointing many of the small rural farming communities. The couple making a brief stop at a small roadside sandwich shop at Belleville, Jean posing a question. Would Gary be interested in accompanying her on the journey to Grand Junction and back, until she continued on to Chicago? The early evening finding the couple arriving at the Omaha Amtrak station, 5 blocks from the Missouri River. Gary having decided to accompany Jean and secure a coach ticket, Jean having already made reservation for a berth compartment. With several hours before departure, the two deciding to explore the old market town just north of the train station. The area much like Old Town in Wichita, with converted warehouses, sidewalk cafes, and shops. The two enjoying some India cuisine at an outdoor restaurant before their 11:05 departure to Grand Junction. The iconic California Zephyr, known for its Chicago to Emeryville, Oakland, California scenic journey, arriving. Gary ready to settle for the night in the lounge car, but Jean mentioned he could utilize the upper berth in her compartment. Gary discovering a major problem when attempting to climb into the upper berth, halting and asking if he could occupy the bottom berth, as it had only been a week since his release from the hospital, and his abdomen was still stapled together from the surgery. Gary noticing a change in her attitude, reluctantly agreeing, but her classroom authority was beginning to show. Experiencing a very uncomfortable night, Gary realizing his bad judgment in attempting a trip like this so soon, but was determined to make the best of it. The two finding the dining car for breakfast, Gary seated facing the rear of the train when suddenly noticing some large debris passing by the dining car window, and before he could say, "Did you see that?" the train immediately coming to a sudden halt. The conductor giving the passengers notice they had struck a vehicle pulling a trailer at a crossing. Soon more word about the event, the driver uninjured but a number of horses in the large trailer not surviving. The train setting motionless for 2 hours while the local Eastern Colorado authorities investigated the accident. Once resuming, the Santa Fe conveyance finally arriving in Denver, over 2 hours late, and then another delay, Amtrak having to locate a replacement locomotive for the damaged Zephyr engine. The travel to Grand Junction finally resuming, the train no longer pulled by a sleek line Zephyr locomotive. Gary was more than impressed with the scenic panoramic view the majestic Rockies provided between Denver and Grand Junction. The winding tracks of yesteryear hugging the mountain through the gorges, the sparkling rivers down below, the narrow railway tunnels, reamed out of bedrock by the workers of a bygone era, a scenic wonder. Arriving after dark in Grand Junction, the two taking a cab, Jean having made a prior hotel reservation, Gary getting a room more than ready for a night's rest. After breakfast, Jean trying to maintain her original schedule, leasing a car to explore the Colorado National Monument, the prestigious canyons and mesas west of where two magnificent rivers, the Gunnison and the Colorado, acquaint each other. Gary finding the excursion enlightening, but found it exhausting, having difficulty walking and preferring solitude in his painful discomfort, not wanting to say anything that might hamper Jean's agenda. The late afternoon found them boarding the train for the overnight return, Gary deciding he would be more comfortable dozing seated in the lounge car, than laying down on the hard surface of a berth. The morning finding him having breakfast alone, not wanting to disturb Jean, but having lingering misgivings about the trip, later meeting with her in the observation car. It was a late morning arrival in Omaha, Jean continuing on to Chicago, Gary, once on the Beckoning Road, feeling the comfort of his surroundings, noting the state line sign, "Welcome to Kansas." The experience, although unexpected, would be memorable, as would acquiring the true personality preface of Dr. Jean Picard, Ph.D.